My first direct connection to my murkier past was through Winifred Ely Bole, Granny, whom I knew well and who lived well into her 90s. We would say, "Good night, Granny, see you tomorrow," and she would say, "I hope not." We have some of her objects that we saw our whole life, me and my late sister Winifred. Granny's trunk of rotting clothing, the finger bowls, the snippets of stories, scrapbooks, and a trove of photographs, many taken by my great-granddad, Fred Ely. And I grew up with what was the leftover Victorian culture, mixed with industrial decay and an emptying out going on around when this picture was taken of Granny in the late 1960s. Several things prompted my piece in the gallery. For the past 15 years, I have been labeling the many photos, trying to get them into interested places, preparing for post-me. At this point, I am the only person still alive who can correctly identify the people, if it even matters, but it does matter to me. Then 10 years ago, when one of my two cousins died, visiting his wife, she asked if I wanted a trunk of pictures she was about to throw out. This picture was at the bottom of that box, among many other albumin treasures. Great-grandfather Fred Ely took this of his wife Mattie in the 1880s. And on the back, all it said was, "Gowned in widow's weeds," vernacular for wearing mourning clothing, no mention of the gaiter. The sheer arbitrary nature of what slips through and what doesn't, we all have our examples. And important formative books, like Michael Lessie's Wisconsin Death Trip, that does what Bob Dylan calls time out of mind, and Susan Sontag stating what is right in front of us. All photographs are memento mori. I know about shock of the new, but I also know about shock of the old. In 2013, I was in a group show, Wounded Home, concerning the U.S. Civil War period, curated by Kate Kern at the Lloyd Library and Museum in Cincinnati. This is a detail of that piece, drawing and withdrawing room paper. I thought a lot about the 1860s and the relationship to my Ely ancestors, the part of the family that has come down so well documented. I visited the location where the Ely house stood in Cleveland and where it vanished in 1950. And then even the ground was scooped out to make way for the Inner Belt Highway. This Kodak #1 picture of my great-aunt Gertrude sits on that ephemeral earth. Shortly after this was taken, Gertrude was resting in her wedding photos and standing for her obituary. The wallpaper version is printed in a faux cyanotype blue. Some of the photos have been in our trunk, so I knew them from childhood. This curly picture of great-grandmother Mattie Ely with the fascinator in her hat early on seemed right, conjoined with a bison. Here again, my dear Granny, Winifred Ely Bole's wedding picture, and the nuptial slip that the nuns embroidered with an arrow pointing to her crotch. Family White Elephant, 1860, and I did add family to the title. Both in book form and in the ephemeral wallpaper here, were printed over a 3-year period at Logan Elm Press under the knowledgeable Bob Tauber. He is making a plate here. And last year, printing continued under the knowledgeable Heather Wetzel. The plates are photopolymer and ink colors are hand-mixed. Lots of multicolor print rolls are possible on the Vandercook letterpress, on which all the small wallpaper squares were made. I thought about how insistent wallpaper and repeating imagery are. And I decided for the piece here, I would have a montage of shifting images starting in the 1860s and moving forward to 1960 and my sister leaping off. There would be nothing else in the room, just the paper images and the 2 papered light switch plates. The 5 larger images are of the family tree of life, and they follow a nonlinear, mostly chronological order. The family house appears roughly through the timeline in its time. The wallpaper, or wall clothing, as William Morris and others have referred to it, has a soft feel that I hope makes you want to touch. And you may as well touch it if you want. That is the beauty of wallpaper that only needs to live for 2 months. Also, it drove me crazy having different quantities of square images to work with, which I did on purpose in the beginning. But in the end, this helped give the walls their montage and shifting quality. The piece begins with images like this one. There are patches from the Civil War. The army tents are in the 2 colors of their uniforms. I used a cheery rice paper with its bits of mulberry bark, a quick aging device. 1860, my great-grandparents, Mattie and Fred Ely, are married. Although I am the caretaker of Fred's pictures, he especially is an enigma. My grandmother didn't really talk about him much. Also, these show the use of the shifting multicolored print rolls possible on the Vandercook press, which I made full advantage of. They get a white porcelain elephant with sad, just-cried eyes for a wedding present. In 1880, this picture by Fred Ely, an interior shot, shows the white elephant still up on the shelf. In my printed version, the elephant, although real in the early photograph, had to be moved in order to fit the square frame. The chair is burning, but not the fire. And the elephant soldiers on, 1960 on the shelf behind my floating sister. I thought of posing the elephant at different angles and sizes within the piece to make it seem more like something I physically knew. This is the enamel, this is the version of it as enamel on steel. And curious objects that have come down, violent silver, sexy silver. Growing up, my dad, the smoker in the wallpaper, had this book tucked in next to the LPs, looking through my dear dead days. It felt like the unspoken world was splayed out and exposed. I later recognized this vein of thought in counterculture publications like the research ones from LA or Maledicta Press and many others. Goulardi for Clevelanders. I explored and loved the industrial wasteland, my hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. I took this in 1979 on a bike ride near the slime pit, as we called it. As a child, we often drove over the Clark Avenue Bridge near this place, watching steel lava being poured as we drove to the west side to visit my mom, the nurse in the wallpaper, her immigrant side of the family. The bridge was imploded in 1983. I miss it. 1978, some of those same ideas carry through. In art school in Ann Arbor, Eric Obrosi and I made this monument proposal book. As I look back at 43 years of making, it seems that the absurdity of time has been an underlying force. Here, the same shape takes 100 years to form by the one-directional trade winds, or is gone in a whiff. It's from a book from the 90s, a collaborative book called Rest. Minerals, geologic materials, the rust belt, the clay, glass, and metal belts too. This is from Hall, China, rubber glove molds in 1989, East Liverpool, Ohio. The entire factory was filled with arms and all the earthly colors, material deposits, brick collecting in Ohio. Industrial factory towns showcasing their inventory, a burnt cookie, salt-fired silo house product. Haydenville, Ohio, late 19th century. Hayden had a bank in Columbus, and his is the largest ostentatious mausoleum in Green Lawn Cemetery, way bigger than the silo house. Honeymooning in Centralia, Pennsylvania, 1994. Inspired by Woody Guthrie's song about the 1930s mine fire still smoldering today. Whole houses were sinking into the ground, and here these normally solid bricks as stacks seemed like such futile supports. Living in Lithuania, 1992, Forlorn Graphics. This magazine cover, which I still look at, has a quality that permeates some of my paper squares. Hill of Crosses, Bole, Lithuania. One cross with another mound of crosses piled up under it, another power of 10. Proximity to industry for possible makeshift experiences. Here I am in Chicago making my work at the Dido Monument Plaque Company for 2 years, off and on, 2002 to 2004. Everything about the antiquated colloidal process was exquisite. One of the staff showed me the furnace to fuse the enamel onto the copper plaques. He said, "Welcome to the Industrial Revolution." How inert materials break down into reticulation or fractals. These are overfired melting monument plaques, leaching and fuming. The plaques led to both tintypes and large-scale enamel work on steel. In thinking about the squares and rectangles in the wallpaper, I look back to see relating works from my past. 1986, before the Domo project at Spaces in Cleveland, where a lot of artists from Cleveland designed functioning things for the house. This was a bathroom that Danny Postotnik and I made lots of tiles of things you do in the bathroom. Invited by the late Jane Farver, I made my first wallpaper piece for the entryway to the new Bradley Building gallery space. I made small hand-colored cutouts of transport images and different scenes from the previous space to the new location. No photos exist. 1990, Stuff of Self, with Chernobyl necklace beads, slip casts from molds of bowling balls. I painted the beads with different aspects of my life at age 33. High Street Tar Cloisonne, 1992. A collection of things I saw biking embedded in hot summer tar. Sign of the times, lots of crushed tape cassettes. Collaborative stamps that came with our collaborative book, Rest, printed at Knust Press in the Netherlands in 1996 with Barry van Boekel and Bertie Thaler. My father, the smoker, was a stamp collector, and it has seemed right to include stamp sheets in my book projects. 1996, our top 100 with friends. We played all 100 pieces of music in a countdown. We were both doing occasional radio shows here and in Holland. Other stamp sheets, hand perforated, collections of squares and rectangles. My barbed wire collection. A wall of drawings at the Weston Art Gallery in 2005. Granny's Necklace, a full-scale bench, 1996 to 2000. The base is bronze and the seat is a kind of photogenic mosaic of women tending to women and a surrounding necklace with repeating images of 4 women. Here is the seat surface. I knew the image wanted a sober quality. I kept shrinking the size of the tessera to try to keep the imagery from being too comical. I arrived at the scale of the Roman mosaics with their quieter quality than the Byzantine ones in Ravenna, for example. By repeating the same 4 women in the necklace, and as the chips have their way with the repeating faces, it seemed like different aspects of their personalities were revealed. I used black and white phototones and added silver luster tile too, which gave a faux daguerreotype slant to it. A second bench, Ruth Winifred, was 11 years in the making. An oval ring of my family sits next to a ring of women whose vintage clothing and hairstyles lead one to assume they must have all passed. At one point, my sister's chemo head meets another head empty of hair clipped from the newspaper. Then the time span shifts. Other women kick up their heels in defiance to the whole thing. The photogenic drawing is constructed out of a family of shapes. Cubes quiet the image down. Bars imply movement. Shapes called fingernails are bars beveled on each end. Many talented artists have helped cut the tessera, keeping in time with me. Thank you to Randy Channel, Shauna Merriman, and Sarah Myers especially. (2007), You Forget, self-portrait, stereoscopic tintype. Camp Tintype is a place I went after making the tomb plaque company not only closed, but the building was bulldozed and it was completely gone. And then I started looking into tintypes and the larger enamel work. (2013), my other book published by Logan Elm Press was Toilet Worship. And we are all just really hoping the powers that be will allow Logan Elm Press to start up again. We're all very sad about it being mothballed. What a strange way to put it. Toilet Worship comes with stamps. The fake material is Blodo body, one of my alchemical formulas, a scatological brown floating clay. The book covers for Toilet Worship have tintypes I made of TP back in the woods, tipped into the covers. The end sheets picture the whole collection as seen here. Bathroom concealment, with an extra bathroom hidden inside the walled-off tub. You can read what happened if you dare on your right. The wallpaper consists of misprints from the Toilet Worship book, part of Rooms to Let. It was in a Franklinton abandoned house in 2011. Melissa Vogley Woods is the mistress mind behind Rooms to Let. 2014 solo show in my solo show in LA at Mount St. Mary's, Tombs and Toilets was the name of the show. It included a toilet worship misprint wallpaper section. These are the end sheets for Combing Columbus, the book I made for Finding Time, Columbus Public Art 2012 for the bicentennial. I used the matchbook collection to squeeze as much of Columbus into my book as possible. Using a template from a Civil War souvenir from Gettysburg and implanting some of the tombstone gems from our airport pet cemetery, Brown Pet Cemetery, an amazing place. Picnic at the pet cemetery. While Combing Columbus features me combing Columbus, I am starting a Combing Cleveland book too, and I can see something about the white elephant collaging seeping in. I don't think before I would have had me floating in the sky. I have been, like many people, collecting and looking at TV signal breakdown. Some of my favorite are from the Sandman Motel, where I stay when working on enamel pieces in Santa Rosa. They're always this kind of green. January in Lithuania, 1992, wallpapered tank posters, flyers, I guess. I did 2 kiosk experiments. When I went back to Lithuania, I took all the high street flyers out at that moment with me, and one night I covered this kiosk in Vilnius with Columbus. And I brought back a stack of Vilnius street flyers and hung them on a high street kiosk. It lasted 1 day before getting covered up. These are wallpaper computer studies where I worked on this with Jim Chapa and Amanda Lake. A computer study for the wallpaper and the wallpaper version. The drinker was my great-great-uncle Clark. And great-aunt Anna Ely, she was invited to parties to whistle. Gary Bronstein showed me a picture of his ancestor posed with fake snow somewhere in Boston. I remembered an Ely family tintype, and I painted snow on this enamel version. Mine came out more celestial and with epaulets. The photograph here is stuck to a piece of convex glass. Deceased little Elma Ely gets cut out and stuck into pictures as the other sisters grow. On the back, the label says H.J. Frank Studio, number 65 Prospect Street, porcelain albumum photograph. In the wallpaper, I tried for a more faux daguerreotype. Great-granddad Fred Ely had a Kodak #1 with which he produced these 2-inch round images. Scanning them super scale has allowed me to peer into some of the rooms he took relaxed pictures of. There I could see the white kidskin boxing gloves hanging. Granny and 2 friends in a play. Seemed a little too sweet for the wallpaper, so you just get their kind of daffodil heads and fake braids. 3 generations of Elys labeled on the back, coming out party. This was the real phrase used, so I included it. Some of my prints have the words, other copies don't, so that things keep shifting, or you might see it slightly differently in a different moment. I have long loved the red shiso knitted hats from Japan. Intuitively, I added them to my Ely women. But I have also been looking at this hooded image in the sole volume we have of the Gaudy Women's Magazine, covering the year 1863. I've looked through it my whole life. It was kept in the trunk. The molding in the room is made of Dr. Walker's 19th century DIY medical encyclopedia from the Lloyd Library collection. I inked them to feel a bit like cooked burnt cookie books. Here are Dr. Walker's animal-like volumes, more than 100 of them. And another view of them in the basement. The Lloyd is an absolutely incredible place in Cincinnati. Where need be, it is his handwriting I forge throughout the piece. And it's so amazing. I thought of this as disease under a microscope. Weeping willows, 4 seasons occur in random spots. And many of the drawings, my drawings, incorporate materials leaching or dissolving into each other. This is Family Portraits Now and Then from 2005, and that's an example of that. The lilac portraits preserved in the frames stay fresh, while the enlarged dead flowers continue with ravages. There is also a recent serograph version of this part of the Ohio portfolio, the Joseph editions. This is a drawing called Breakdown from 2010. Reticulation, leaching materials, becoming other, a procession of people is almost completely obliterated with Daniel Johnston lyrics. Details. You can see the influence of all those multicolored print rolls I did at Logan Elm Press, kind of coming into the way I work with typeface in the drawings. And in Family White Elephant, 1860 on, the family tree of life in 5 versions incorporated into the wallpaper. This is the Civil War era. Empty hats from the Gaudy magazine book are the onlookers. Floor plans and the names of period rooms, drawing and withdrawing rooms, the keeping room and the buttery, etc. The Civil War times begin to break apart. Or maybe more than break apart, unhinged. The tree form comes back into focus as the Ely family attach objects to their life. Here is the back of that drawing. I thought of leaching color seeping up and through the paper, permeating it, not just this way, but also this way. Those circles with green around them are all that's left of that sculpture on the left on a photo by Fred Ely, and all we have is the head. I think there was a cat fight at some point, and the body was obliterated. Dissolve. The back of dissolve. Collapse. Our times, our cancer, the moon and the mammogram, when one gets a mammogram, they put these nipple locators with little lead dots in them on your nipples, and I'm always asking for them afterwards. My sister Winifred would adore that by serendipity her print ended up on the light switch. Turn her off, turn her on. Here's Eddie Browning hanging each square. My back thanks him very much. Amy McCrory's photos of the concertina book version of Family White Elephant 1860 onward. Winifred leaps off, the moon and the mammogram, and wallpaper as wall clothing. That's it.